If I start talking physics, then I'm going to be instantly out of my depth. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You don't want to overcorrect. Tell it to anyone who's ever fallen off a skateboard. You have to watch you don't overbalance one way or the other. But how do you create balance? Gently. It's about precision. And as we've already discussed, that means awareness. How do you choose the optimal path? You pick the right one, but maybe that isn't the obvious one. You can't just starve yourself to lose weight because you're dealing with a complex system designed to stop you from starving to death under extreme circumstances. Your body adjusts. We make decisions based on available information, but the situation is usually more complex than our rational deductions, or how we want things to be, or what the textbook told us. This is why real-world experience is invaluable, because otherwise there will no doubt be any number of factors which we haven't taken into account. And for all our good intentions, we won't know how or when to act, at which point we're already on the road to hell. But it's better to have a mentor along the way, to point out the worst of the pitfalls, to create a walled garden where it's safe to play. But you don't want to be overprotected. You need to become tough, resilient, ready to take your sword and go out into the world. Balance and goals go hand in hand like stillness and flow. Because how do you take aim? You balance the crosshairs. How do you stop from wavering? You still yourself. You hold your breath. It is all interlinked. It's part of a whole. And it helps if you break things down into their component parts when you're trying to learn them. But if you wish to master a process, you have to put all the component parts together seamlessly. But you already do this. If you've ever learned how to tie your own shoelaces, if you've ever learned how to read words, if you've ever learned how to eat food, you've attained mastery in a number of things. You might think nothing of it. You might take it all for granted. Putting the food on the fork, lifting the food to your mouth, chewing and swallowing. But that's more than some people can manage for themselves. We put pressure on one another as individuals, as society, to achieve more, to attain goals, to be independent, to fall into gender roles. And the only people who should be made to feel ashamed of themselves are those who are willfully cruel and malicious, those who act like archetypal villains. If a person is capable of being independent, yet doesn't make that leap of faith, because they've lacked the necessary guidance. If somebody doesn't fall into traditional gender roles, it's nobody's business but their own. Do not feel ashamed of yourself because you fall short of somebody else's standards. If you have done wrong, then correct your mistakes. But do not let anybody make you feel ashamed for who you are. Gender, ethnicity, intelligence, sexuality, appearance, it's their problem, not yours. But when it comes to catastrophizing and similar imbalances of perception, know that you're the one who is generating the problem. Think of it like a microphone that's been left next to a speaker. That horrible whine is a feedback loop. Fear creates a vicious circle. Say you have neurotic tendencies like I do, and a work colleague doesn't reply to an email, and you're left waiting over the weekend in a state of ambiguity. Although it's inconsequential, by the Monday it's turned into an issue. You like things to get done promptly so that you can put them aside and relax properly. You're upset with them for not respecting you enough to bother to reply. The anger you feel is disproportionate to the matter at hand because you are afraid. You're afraid of your own reaction. You know that you don't like ambiguity. You know how you get. But it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Roosevelt's famous line, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Fear becomes paralysis, it becomes frustration, anger, resentment. To truly understand the optimal path, you must first conquer your fears. Fears about how you will be perceived, fear of failure, and fear of fear itself. As this is a book about the flowering of consciousness, it is also a book about stillness, learning to flow, choosing the right goals and the strategies to achieve them. It's also about finding balance. Balance in your perspectives, balance in your reasoning, balance in your actions. We all know about fairness. We have an inbuilt physical disgust when we see something which is unacceptable. The abusive paedophile, a corporate swindler, when power is wielded with cruel and self-indulgent contempt. And when I say the word good, to do good, to be a force of good in the world, I mean to bring balance, but to address the situation with open eyes, to see things as they actually are. The complex systems of the world can't be rationalized down into some one-sentence slogan. I personally am as equipped to solve the world's problems as I am to build a helicopter, which is to say, not at all. But I am starting to understand myself, and through that I'm starting to understand something of the world around me, the interplay of chaos and order, and taken to their extremes, they are both truly catastrophic, both on a personal level and at the level of nations, where they are the bringers of genocide and unspeakable horror. But I'm not talking to nations. I'm talking to you, the individual, because we are more like you and I than you realize. We all are. There was a time when I was convinced that I was utterly alone in the cosmos, that nobody would understand the thoughts that roam around inside my head. But now I see that nothing could be further from the truth. That every teenager out there sitting with a razor blade in their hand feels just the same way that I do. We all see the same injustices in the world and feel powerless to do anything about it. But it isn't true, honestly, it isn't. But we have to start within our domain of control. It starts with simple actions, making the right choices day by day, learning how to still our racing minds, putting aside the distractions of modern culture and being at peace within ourselves. Then, one step at a time, learning to flow through the various challenges that life throws at us until we can buy ourselves the time to lift our heads and look to the future, putting in place the strategies which will create opportunities, balancing our aim on the greatest good that we can conceive so that our perspective falls into alignment around it, so that every action we take is charged with the purest of intention. Solzhenitsyn said the line dividing good and evil runs through the heart of every human being. It's within your power to make a difference in your own life and in the lives of those around you. And maybe that's just putting down your phone and listening to your kids. Maybe that's just being a little more understanding with your workmates, a little more understanding with yourself. Because when you see life as being in the pursuit of a higher purpose, then you'll start to see the beauty in everything, even yourself. You'll start to feel like you are worth something, that you are engaged in something which truly matters. You'll feel driven on with an unstoppable force. And you'll start to see your own potential shining through. You'll start to see the good in others, and you'll allow yourself to care, the kind of passion that's causing the tears to flow freely down my cheeks in this moment. You will come to learn what it means to truly be alive.